Okay, if everybody could take their seat, please. Thank you so much. Next, we turn to one of the most urgent and fascinating intersections of our time, AI and environmental sustainability. This panel today is hosted by our partner in today's Solution Summit, the Kogod School of Business, and it explores how AI can both challenge and advance sustainable efforts. Our moderator is Professor Guanhu Lee, and he will introduce our esteemed group of panelists. We are so grateful that they're here today and very much looking forward to the conversation. So I please welcome our moderator.
Thank you so much. Have a seat anywhere you like. Have a seat anywhere you like. This is my seat. Yeah, no. Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Okay, excellent. So it's my pleasure to introduce to you the distinguished panel members here. So next to me is Dr. Nicole Darnall. She is a professor and Arlene R. and Robert P. Kogod Eminent Scholar Chair in Sustainability at American University, holding joint appointments in the Kogod School of Business as well as School of Public Affairs. Her research assesses how organizations and individuals can advance sustainability, focusing on organizational structures, technologies, incentives, and capabilities that catalyze transformative change. Nicole has served as a commissioner on the U.S. General Service Administration's, so this is a long committee, Acquisition Policy Federal Advisory Committee, where she provided strategic guidance on embedding sustainability into over $700 trillion federal procurement. Welcome. And next to her is Mr. Illango Patchamuthu. He is currently Director for Strategy and Operations in the Digital and AI Vertical Vice Presidency at the World Bank. So he previously held several senior leadership roles at the World Bank Group, including Director of Strategy and Operations for South Asia region, Country Director for Pakistan, Operations Manager for Afghanistan, and Country Manager for Laos. Next to him is Dr. Douglas Morton. He is an Earth Systems scientist and an adjunct professor at University of Maryland. His work focuses on tropical forests, fires, and food production. Doug contributes to the Global Fire Emissions Database, which is a collaborative effort to characterize the impact of global burned area and carbon emissions from fire activity on the Earth system. Welcome. Next to him is Dr. Simon Nicholson. He is Associate Professor of International Relations and Interim Associate Dean for Research here at School of International Services at American University. His work focuses on global environmental governance, global food politics, and the politics of emerging technologies, including climate engineering and carbon removal technologies. Simon served as a founding director of American University's Cross-Campus Center for Environment, Community, and Equity. The next to him is Mr. Chris Angell. He is Vice President for Strategy at Xylem, the leading global water technology company. He has worked in the water, energy, and clean technology space for more than 15 years, focusing on how companies and organizations can work together to address resource management, infrastructure challenges, and climate change. At Xylem, Chris is responsible for business strategy, mergers, acquisitions, and strategic partnerships. Obviously, this is a very accomplished group of experts and leaders in this space. So, well, AI is advancing at breakneck speed, often faster than our institutions or individuals can possibly keep up with. The Science Institute's 2025 Youth Survey reveals that while young Americans want AI education in college, many concerns that it could narrow their career opportunities. Another survey by American University professor Bernhard Gunter shows that college students are concerned about AI's environmental footprint. So there is no doubt that training and deploying AI can consume significant electricity and water. However, these same tools can optimize power grids, forecast demand, and enhance water supply management. So this panel aims to explore the multifaceted impact of AI on environmental sustainability. The panelists will share their unique insights on navigating these competing realities to harness AI's potential for a sustainable future while mitigating its environmental costs. So now I'd like to start with a question for all panel members. As I noted earlier, AI is often described as both a promising solution to environmental challenges and a growing source for energy and water consumption. From your perspective and experience, when you weigh these benefits against the cost, is AI today a net positive or net negative for environmental sustainability? And what leads you to that view? So I can, Nicole, do you want to start?
Sure. Can you hear me okay? Is that on? What? I think the jury's still out. No. Flip a switch. How about now?
No?
How about now? All right. So I think that the jury's still out. It depends on the application. It depends on the scenario. It depends on the extent to which we've scaled sufficiently. What we do know, though, is that in order to make the effort and the transition that we need in order to balance this more appropriately, we need greater transparency along the way about those particular impacts, about who is impacted and in what communities, bringing transparencies to bear so that we can truly understand the efficiency gains that are going to be needed in order to scale this effectively, that it holds enormous promise. And I would say it's like this. This is a very similar scenario to most sustainability technologies that are out there. There's the glass half empty response and the glass half full response. The half empty response is, what do we do with the waste? What do we do with the inefficiency? The glass half full response is, but wait a minute, we may be able to explore solutions that otherwise were completely impossible to explore previously. But we have cautions along the way that need to be, I think, yielded to.
Excellent, thank you. And Illango?
Yeah. Can you hear me? Thank you for the question. It's a pleasure to be here. Again, it depends. AI as a tool in application, yes, brings about productivity and efficiency gains. But AI also is very data and context dependent, which means it has to run on extensive compute power, which requires energy and which requires a lot of talent. So if that part is not going to be sustainable, then whatever we do on AI application to make it efficient and productive is not going to be certainly a positive for the world as a whole. And so we need to see how that balances out, though it's not directly linked to environment sustainability, but also AI brings other societal risks. So how do you come up with better AI governance around the world so that things like data privacy, data sovereignty, and so on can be better managed? So it's only time will say whether that promise will be fully realized and that AI will bring about the benefits that all of us are looking to, or is it yet going to be something leaving a big divide, like what digital divide has already done around the world?
Thank you so much. And next.
Yeah, thank you very much. A great opportunity to be here and to share some thoughts with you. And I will say, just for my own expertise, I'm more on the development side of AI and the use of AI in analyzing large geospatial data sets. And so certainly working towards improving the upside of the technology, but recognizing 100% some of the limitations that have already been recognized. in addition to some of the haves and have-nots, Illango, that I think you mentioned, I think there's an element here of continuing to make sure that AI, as we transition into this future, which is going to be AI-enabled, keeps hold of critical parts of expertise that are necessary. And we talk about this in the context of some amount of computer science and explainable AI. Are we continuing to leverage our understanding of the underlying physics or the impacts, as we were hearing in the last session, of the impacts of decisions that are made with AI and improving the livelihoods and sustainability? So yeah, I guess my glass is still about half full, but I think we're continuing to work in this space in ways that are trying to preserve both the upside opportunities that Nicole mentioned, the concerns that I think are real, and trying to come up with some demonstrated ways in which there's real benefit here. So exploring, for example, just quickly in, say, the data sets or in the forecasting domain, can we provide more robust weather forecasts 6, 10, 14 days in advance that gives communities that might be in the way of a large tropical storm or other natural event, can we give them more time to prepare, to mobilize, to move, and to safeguard their communities, those ecosystems, their livestock, you name it? I think those are the tangible elements that'll push us towards seeing the upside of sustainability in the AI realm.
Excellent. Simon?
I have a microphone, but I don't know if it's working, so if I can steal yours. Hi, everybody. Glass half empty, glass half full. I have no idea if we've worked out what the glass is yet. And I say that because here's my big concern with AI. I think it forces us to nibble at the edges of the sustainability crisis. It doesn't help us address what's actually going on, right? I'm from the School of International Service here on the American University campus. The architect for the building in which I sit was a guy named Bill McDonough. And one of the lines from Bill was, if you're doing the wrong thing, it doesn't help to be more efficient. In fact, it might be pernicious, right? And so what we're doing with AI is we're creating an enormous consolidation of power and wealth in the hands of a few people who are driving a vision of the world's future that is not compatible with ecological realities, right? And so I don't know that AI can fix that. If we're just going to have more and more economic activity with more and more material throughput on a finite planet, and imagine that AI can help us do that more efficiently, for what end, right? I think becomes the big open question that AI alone cannot tackle. And so, I like that line, an AI-enabled future. I worry at the moment that we're being driven into an AI-written future, that AI is charting the course for us. As one poet once said, machines are in the saddle and ride mankind. Right, here we are just kind of following a path that is being set for us by a few or by the machines without really working out what we're looking to do this for, right? This is more an ethical question or a political question than it is a technological question, to my mind.
I appreciate your view. Thank you. Next.
Good afternoon, everybody, and I will echo all the other panels. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to have a water company be on one of these panels because we don't actually get a lot of attention to water, and it is one of the hidden topics in the generation of and use of AI. So maybe I'll answer it. The glass has water in it. So, I think there's AI it's not really debatable at this point. It's happening. It infuses every part of our work, our day, how we generate information, how we consume information. And so there are tons of questions, but from a kind of sustainability and a hidden part of the AI value chain discussion, I would really point to, kind of 3 areas where I think there are questions to grapple with. The first, in just the generation of AI, the information, the compute, the water consumption of that is a tremendous resource draw. So every 30 minutes of AI uses a bottle of water. So it's real and it's happening. And that's something that our water systems have to grapple with. The second is a reality that water systems are massively underfunded, massively underutilized, or under-resourced. And AI presents a real opportunity in how do we make more efficient and effective use of the resources that we have. And then third is there's a reality of the intersection of the digital and the physical world where AI is only as good as the data that it rests on. And so, the other part of this, especially in our water system, is how do we generate that data? How do we continue to support that data? And so, again, it's not good or bad. It's a question of, with the promise of AI and the benefits that it can drive and the need for information, how are we actually going to create that data that can drive those models?
Excellent, thank you. Yeah, we tend to think a lot about AI's electricity consumption, but not as much as AI's water consumption, but that's a real issue. So I appreciate this. So I have one follow-up question for each of the speaker, kind of random order. So I'll start with Doug. So government agencies have long used the satellite data and AI to monitor deforestation, wildfires, and climate change. So could you share specific examples of how AI-driven Earth observation is improving environmental prediction or policy responses, and what limitations or risks still exist?
It's a great question. How much time do I have? I will say that, so yes, I feel like this is one of the critical pieces. And just to pick up on Chris's comment about the data inputs, right, for the AI models, satellite data, in particular, government-led data collection that are free and open to everyone have been the foundation for a lot of our environmental monitoring work. That's been really critical in terms of improving both the transparency and the accountability for actors in terms of achieving sustainability goals in places like the Amazon where I work, but also in other ecosystems and communities around the world. And so that availability of high quality, trusted and transparent data is really essential. And so in the last several years, NASA has partnered with IBM, but there are others out there too that are making foundation models, not out of language, like the ones you'd be familiar with in ChatGPT, but out of satellite imagery. So can we use AI-based tools and software to better understand patterns in satellite imagery? And that continues to be a really promising avenue moving forward because every day on orbit, we've got dozens of satellites collecting terabytes of data, the likes of which is difficult to parse without the use of computer technologies, and that's been the basis for a lot of our work up until now. But are we getting any better or any faster at identifying new deforestation, or in my case, looking at wildfires? I think the answer there is we're working on it. We're working actively in that space right now. I'm very privileged. I work with Professor Leah Ding, who's in computer science here at American University, to figure out if we can do a better job of identifying fires under clouds. Because it turns out fires are burning all over the world. I mean, some places on fire right now, right? And satellites are often, but not always, the first times to detect that. And so could we get better at identifying fires, tracking them over time, and using that information to better understand how fires are changing in a warmer, more flammable world? Those are critical advances and opportunities that I think are really moving us forward here. AI is going to be a part of that solution. I think as we've discussed here already, we're moving into a tool space where AI-related capabilities are important. But to Chris's point earlier, and maybe I'll just end on this, if we don't have access to high-quality, well-curated, calibrated data to feed those models, we're not going to get any better at this. And I think that's one of the things I look at right now and see as Simon was saying, we're pivoting towards the use of private sector actors for the leadership of both information that's generated through AI and the tools that are used to generate that information. I think we lose something really important in the context of sustainability when we don't have free, open access to transparent and trusted data. And I think we've seen this in many sectors in the last 41 days. I think we're going to continue to see that as a part of this conversation if we aren't safeguarding some of the input data streams that are so critical for developing, training, and improving the AI models and making better decisions in the future.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. My next question is actually back to Chris. At Xylem, AI is being used to optimize water infrastructure and reduce leakage and waste, right? So what have you learned about the practical barriers as well as enablers of applying AI in real-world sustainability context, especially in sectors like water and utilities?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and the answer is it's not that different than in almost any other workforce type environment where change management, usage adoption, data reliability, and cleanliness are kind of ongoing issues. So, when I think of the opportunity of AI in the water space, and especially in the water utility space, water utilities face, if you read the national engineering reports, sort of a $700 billion funding shortfall. There's a massively aging workforce that is going to retire in the coming years. And people don't really want to go work for their utilities. It's not as much of an exciting job, and you're seeing a lot of knowledge basically walk out the door. So, when I think about the opportunity and kind of the upside, AI has the ability to help with operational efficiency, with resource and maintenance planning. I mean, this is not the sexy stuff. It's, where are you going to send the DC water truck in a given day, and how do you make sure they're going to the most important call? Or if you have a system that's based on water meters that's giving you errors in 10 different districts, how do you prioritize which of those errors are actually real and that you need to send somebody to go turn a wrench on? That's the benefit, but again, it relies on kind of active use, reliable data, training, and the digitization of systems, which, in the water space, a lot of systems are still very analog, they're very manual based. And so there's just a lot of work to do to be in a position where you can actually get the system benefits of AI. And that gets to both kind of the benefits and the barriers. It's really, how do you get the data? How do you get the operations in place?
Excellent. I guess the young people who really care about environment would love to work for companies like you, like utilities, and I think they are very sexy companies for them, no?
Well, I will say, Xylem is a great company to work for, and we are, but the water space is not the place that gets a lot of attention, and so it's sort of the comment was made earlier that everybody's talking about the power challenges around AI. Well, the power challenges around AI are actually water challenges. The systems, use, when I talk about the bottle of water and 30 minutes of consumption, about 60% of that consumption is in the power generation going into AI. So yes, we're the companies that are addressing these challenges, that are working hand in hand with power generators, with the big data companies to build systems, and with utilities to address these challenges. But utilities have a tough time recruiting people. It's a tough time maintaining them. So, when I think about the water cycle and the water sector, I'm very focused on the utility industry and the incredible benefit and impact utilities can have. And these are, very much service-focused, public servant-led companies, but they have a hard time recruiting and retaining talent. And it's the place probably with one of the biggest areas of potential impact and opportunity.
If we have students here, there are job opportunities right here. So thank you, appreciate it. So now, next question is for Professor Nicole Darnall. So given your research on sustainability, governance, and organizational change, what types of institutional or regulatory frameworks are needed to ensure that AI development aligns with the sustainability goals rather than undermines them?
It's a really good question. And I'm going to speak to this theoretically, like what you need in order to make this work. And then we can talk about what's practical and what's not practical. Theoretically, what we need is a group of champions who move forward with standard expectations that get advanced globally. Because we're talking about issues of data privacy, data control, what this looks like. We need risk-based regulations that are in place, enforcements that are tethered to real goals. We need standardized sustainability metrics that are agreed upon across multiple places, and harmonization of expectations. You can't have some countries taking a completely different approach. It undermines everything here. You need a pathway for conflict resolution. These are the big theoretical governance pillars that we see exist in successful multilateral agreements internationally. It is what brought the aviation industry together in the early 1900s to set standards on how we fly and in what ways we communicate with one another, because the risk of catastrophe was so gigantic and it affected every country, right? That was part of this industry. We see similar standards that have emerged in the nuclear space. What's missing in this particular setting that is also missing in the Paris Climate Agreement and in the plastics negotiation is consensus of a problem. And that is first and foremost where we need to start. And in the absence of that, it makes it very difficult for these other elements to come into play. It doesn't mean it's impossible. It just makes the process much more difficult.
Excellent, excellent response. My next question is for Simon over there. So earlier you shared a rather critical view on the impact of AI. From an international relations standpoint, how might AI reshape global environmental governance? Do you foresee AI becoming a source of global cooperation or more of a new domain of a geopolitical competition?
So when I think about global environmental governance, this is humanity's response to environmental change. This is what we're talking about. And the only reason we have some shared conception of a problem when it comes to the environment, so borrowed Nicole's framing there, is because of Earth system observation. Right? Human beings needed to see the world in a particular way to recognize environmental challenges that then politically we tried to manage. And so the first big international environmental conference in 1972 sparked a set of environmental cooperative agreements that issue by issue have tried to deal with things like ozone depletion and plastics and what's going on with the oceans and now climate change. This is the couple of weeks of the climate COP, right, where countries are coming together to try and advance climate action. That's a model that has served humanity, reasonably well through some decades now of cooperation. And with AI, the world is becoming much more complex, much more quickly, such that we're going through a period of acceleration that this old model of international environmental governance may not be equipped to handle, especially at a time when the world is melting down, not just in climate terms, but can you imagine the major countries of the world coming together to agree on anything right now, right? Throw AI into the mix, and we may see the world in a better fashion, thanks to your work, Doug, and the work of lots of others, but the political capacity to do anything with that information, right, is totally up in the air. Right, and at the same time, just to kind of pick up on the final thread of the question there, AI itself becomes another arena for geopolitical combat, right? Not just competition, but we're going to see, lots and lots of money and lots of effort by lots of countries to win the battle of whatever AI is driving us towards. So these are just such difficult and delicate times. How's that for a non-answer?
Excellent response. Thank you so much. Last but not least, for Illango, so the World Bank supports countries in balancing economic growth with environmental protection. How do you see AI transforming global climate and sustainability efforts in developing economies? What safeguards are necessary to ensure that AI adoption promotes equity and avoids deepening digital or environmental divides?
Yeah, so, there are many fundamentals in the whole data in the digital architecture still. Many of our borrowing countries or client countries are lacking. For example, broadband internet connectivity. It's something not widespread in many parts of the world, as you see in the US. So that's going to be number one. How do you ensure that people have connectivity? Second, smartphones in many countries are still not affordable. Third, data plans remain expensive and out of reach for the bottom 40%. So there are far more fundamental challenges that many of our client countries face when it comes to digital and AI. So The second point I would like to make is that there's a lot of AI hype around the world beyond the US. And every country, every government we speak to, they want to do something with AI. But the question then remains, as I said at the beginning and others have shared, there isn't enough energy, there isn't enough water even to meet the basic needs these countries are challenged on. And they all are trying to do multiple things, which is already challenging and risking environmental sustainability. And we know that across the board. And that's something that some have said here as well. So third, where do we see an opportunity where AI and environment sustainability can go together? We are advocating for small AI solutions, not the big AI driven by hyperscalers and others. What is small AI? It can operate on the edge of a network. It's domain and context specific. It doesn't require a lot of data. It can be run with limited amount of energy and compute power. It can even use just a basic laptop. If you have the small AI application, it can be used. For example, let's say farmers who are struggling with weather reports, who struggle with inputs, who struggle with how much of fertilizer should go in their own cultivation. And there we see opportunity for farmers to be able to work through local institutions who will have access to small AI solutions, who can give them real-time advice, both on text and voice in local languages. And we are seeing this happening in India. We are right now working in one state in India to see how we can help the farmers there to pilot and see whether small AI can provide them with almost immediate advice around agriculture inputs, what's happening with vis-a-vis the weather, and what they should be prepared for. Third, as they go to harvest, what are the markets that are close by they can access, and moving towards if they have digital payments, including on whether they can get credit through these small AI applications. We are doing the same thing in other countries on disaster management, especially on before the disaster happens. How can AI be used effectively to forewarn people? Once a disaster happens, how can we use digital and AI applications to be able to provide relief? So if I have to kind of summarize this, as I said at the beginning, AI offers lots of opportunities, but we have to de-hype the AI in many countries and go towards solution which they can afford. Not only their people, but also the environment, plus also the society. And the important thing is for AI to be helpful to the human cause, trust is the most important thing. Without that, I don't think anyone actually would want to believe in AI after a few years.
Excellent. Thank you. Appreciate it. So I prepared a number of questions. I have a number of questions in my mind, but I want to make sure that we have enough ample time for you to ask questions. So I'll give you a couple of questions for any of you can jump in and respond to. So we have a good representation from academia, business, the international organization, and so on. So how can businesses, governments, or multilateral international organizations and academia work together to harness AI responsibly for environmental sustainability? Are there any successful models or partnerships that illustrate this balance between innovation and regulation? And are you familiar with any of those models and examples that you can share with us? Don't be shy.
Yeah, so I'll maybe point to a couple of models where I think there's signs of opportunity. Circling back to, and you'll hear me keep talking about this again because I think it doesn't get nearly as much time and discussion, but utilities are kind of it's the where it actually happens messy physical world. And so from a partnership perspective, one of the things that I think where there's opportunity in AI is communities of learning and communities of experimentation. And so you see this in utilities here in the US and in the UK in particular, where very organically utilities are coming together. They're defining very tangible use cases for how AI can be used for governance of data, for adoption inside their workforce. They're sharing best practices with each other. It's often community-led. So, Hampton Roads Sewer District, which is in Southern Virginia, and DC Water, and are working with a couple of other local utilities. So it's utilities not too far from each other, talking to each other, developing use cases and best practices together. So the partnerships are not top down. They're not massive formal efforts. They are very organic, folks coming together at user conferences, developing a use case, testing it, sharing it quickly, iterating and moving on. The other area where I think there is sort of interesting partnerships coming around is between kind of big data companies and water and the water sector. So you do see Amazon, Microsoft, Google, all with very strong water components of their sustainability policies. And you see them making very significant investments. So right now, they are working with utilities to put money back into the utility system. So either paying for leak detection systems using AI tools, paying for actual infrastructure. It's not a simple question. There's a lot of questions around ownership, whether the finance, kind of does the financing work? Does it make sense? But you do see resources going back into the water systems, and with water systems being as under-resourced as they are, kind of any resource is a good resource. And then last, I would say, there's, I think, a lot of opportunity around how do we do things around disaster response, things like that, where the partnerships, again, between private sector players and governments do allow us to change the way response happens, the way recovery happens. So the opportunities are there, and you look kind of at the micro community level to find the examples.
Great, thank you so much. Anybody else who can share your thoughts on this? You're good? Okay. Okay, my last question then is for everyone. So in the interest of time, I'll give you up to 1 minute each. So if you look 5 years ahead, what do you envision as the most promising and the most worrying trends in the intersection of AI and environmental sustainability? So maybe I can start with Nicole, and then.
Yeah, I'm excited about two areas. One is the possibility of utilizing AI to help with circular economy platforms and material tracing. There's so much promise within this space, and it is so thorny to manage right now. The question is going to become whether we have the necessary information in order to actually leverage the tool sufficiently. And then second, to utilize AI as a catalyst to embed sustainability into decision-making. I study Scope 3 emissions and decisions to reduce supply chain impacts associated with Scope 3 emissions. You're constantly trading off information in order to make the most sustainable decision, and AI may help make that process faster so that we can actually begin to do what we haven't been able to do to date.
Excellent, thank you. Illango?
Yeah, I would like to see the data centers more and more driven by renewable energy. I think that would be a big win for environment sustainability, and that goes with also a way in which new technologies are emerging on water reuse as well. So that would be two big wins when I look at what AI and environment sustainability can do. Another big win is in many countries, environment permitting is associated with lots of challenges. It's highly bureaucratic. Whether AI can actually fast track, make it more transparent and less transactional for people who are actually being regulated. So I see these are the two big wins. In terms of my big concern would be what I have been saying is the trust. If AI starts hallucinating too much, then I think the communities at large will lose trust in AI.
Thank you. Nicole?
I think I'd like to build a little bit on Illango's example of some of the sort of small farmer example of figuring out how we improve efficiencies and gains with the millions, hundreds of millions, right, of folks at the front lines of sustainability in terms of agriculture. I think we see some of those examples building out of India. I'm involved in some projects in Brazil that are trying to continue to fine-tune and tailor those local examples to real decision-making needs on the ground. I think that would be a huge win, and I think that's where we're going to see real gains in sustainability. I think on the other side of this, I would say that we're in a budget-constrained time right now, and so I think the way in which AI-enabled capabilities could help us maximize all of our current investments in terms of our ability to squeeze more information out of our current systems, I think would be another really important thing to see 5 years from now, where instead of building, launching, and operating tens or hundreds or thousands of new satellites, we're able to continue to make important gains in terms of the use of monitoring technologies for sustainability with our current resources, but that are taking advantage of new insights coming from deep dives through the data with AI tools.
Thank you. And Simon?
I'm trying to steer away from the kind of skeptical view that I gave you with the first answer and find something constructive to say. So one possibility is that AI be utilized for the development of more civic capacity, right? So people can break out of the social media bubbles that we find ourselves in now and actually start, through AI tools, potentially finding each other again, right? And finding new ways of being in the world that could be to everybody's benefit. Again, it's really hard to imagine really constructive political action right now when everybody just feels so lost and so insulated from other points of view, other communities, other ways of seeing the world. Maybe AI can help us through that. I don't know. And the kind of big worry that I have is that AI is just a distraction. It's just a way of kind of being in the world that dangles the solutions to all of our problems just over the horizon. At some point, the machines and some brilliant people in Silicon Valley will fix all of our problems. Nothing needs to change, and on we go as the world burns. Right? It's a wild time, and I think AI in that fashion is just another interposing of technology between us and the real world, the challenges that we face, in a way that might be keeping those problems accelerating rather than helping us to get them into abeyance.
Great. Thank you. And Chris?
I feel like everybody's kind of stolen my answers. I will say, kind of the hopeful version is a world 5 years from now where you see, people using tools available to them to make more efficient decisions, to use the resources they have available to them more effectively, to identify and reduce environmental waste, water leaks reduction, sort of optimized plant usage and energy usage. Like all of these are very tactical things that, 5 years from now, I envision a world where that's just part of the way people work. The risk of that, or the risk that I see 5 years from now is we haven't evolved with it. We are using old regulations, old approaches, and every new data center gets hooked up to the water utility and draws clean drinking water to maintain and cool a data center instead of having isolated loop systems where it's reusing gray water or thinking about kind of the balance of water in the system that it's using. So I think there's going to be a lot of work done to manage the energy use of data centers. I am worried about the management of the water use of data centers.
Great, thank you so much. So now we'll open the floor for questions, and please tell us your name and affiliation before asking your questions.
Sure.
Thank you so much. Truman Gephardt, sophomore here at American. AI is growing, getting faster every single day. And so my question is, do you think there will be at some point a overdependence on AI, and how would that impact the world if it ever did, well, quote, crash, if there is an overdependence on it? Thank you.
That's a great question. Any taker?
I don't know if I'm the best position to answer the question, but so one of the very first books I read on AI and AI futures was Ray Kurzweil's work some years ago, where we kind of promised this notion or put out on the table the notion of the singularity, the idea that at some point some general artificial intelligence will be developed that will supersede human intelligence. And for some people, this would be a moment of just extreme optimism, right? This is what we've been striving for, this idea that we can have a superintelligence that can help us manage global affairs and help us manage human affairs. For others, there would be a moment of extraordinary loss and extraordinary, maybe even existential risk. And so when something about over-reliance on AI, it's being superseded by machines that don't need us anymore. And what kind of world is that, right? That's the Matrix and all these other kind of visions of nastiness. So, we're kind of running headlong into that world without a full understanding of what the end path looks like, or even where the forks in the road might be, right? Governance requires that we kind of understand what we're doing in some basic way so that we can make decisions. AI is just like moving so fast, with so few people actually understanding, let alone in control, that I couldn't tell you in 5 years what the world's going to look like, let alone what the AI portion of the world's going to look like.
I'd like to poke at that a little bit. And your question stumped me because as a sustainability person, I don't necessarily think more broadly and in this way. I'm thinking from a sustainability point of view. But this actually is a sustainability point of view. So I saw a graph about 6 months ago. Don't ask me the source, but I'm happy to get it to you. I'd have to go back to my office and get it. That showed how people are using artificial intelligence right now. What the number one motivation to using artificial intelligence is: communication with a bot. They are engaging in conversations with AI. It is becoming a way to occupy time. In a world that has not seen this degree of loneliness before, we're relying on AI to fill the hollowness inside us. And so I have enormous worry. First, I want to go back and look at that study and figure out, like, who did they actually study and what did this look like? But even if a fragment of this is true, it helps, it is making the fissures in modern society even greater. And these are really important issues we're going to have to wrestle with.
Pick up on one other theme here, a different look at sustainability, but our sustainability of our ability to generate and improve upon current AI capabilities is one of the things that I think we've talked about here in part with the kinds of input data sets or kind of underlying expertise. But I think one of the potential downsides that I see to the narrowing of domain expertise that has allowed us to build the interconnectedness and the tools that are drawing on that body of knowledge is if we're not sustaining those into the future, then we're not able to rebuild in the same way as should there be a crash or should there be a problem or too much hallucination or too much slop in the mix. And so, yeah, having concrete plans about governance, but having concrete and thoughtful plans about how we maintain core capabilities that allow us to continue to advance towards our end goals as designed is another part of the sustainability challenge with AI that I see coming right around the future. You mentioned, Professor Lee, the students worried about the job markets. Well, yeah, I mean, if we don't have domain expertise that allows us to reconstruct and understand, the components that are built and knit together through the AI tools, I think we're also a bit short-sighted for whenever that crash comes.
Yeah, if I may add to that, on your point, as we, over-rely on, can you see me? It's a transparent podium, so that's fine. But as we over-rely on AI, what we do is we delegate our work to machines, and then expertise does not reside within human anymore. So all the knowledge and expertise now reside in machines. So what happens is when the machines get out of hand, humans do not have ability to address the problem. So that's a real risk. And then that's why some of the scientists warn us about the existential threat, but that's a real risk. But excellent question. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. Really an excellent panel and very stimulating and concerning, I guess. So I'm Carol Gary Schneider with the Civic Learning and Democracy Engagement Coalition that has just joined AU. And I think about these issues mainly from the point of view of learning. So you've raised the question, what kind of data is going into these systems that are being managed? But I want to press you to talk about how you're changing the way you educate students so that they actually have the capacities to know the difference between a hallucination and something that is actually real, and so that they can position themselves to help create those systems that you have persuaded me we urgently need. So I'd really like to hear how all of you are thinking about the educational aspect of this.
That's another excellent question. Any?
I can give you one example that I used last week in class. I teach project management for sustainability. Last week's topic was on budgeting, around particular projects. Budgeting, yeah. And so they're costing out systems, various systems, and each of the different project teams use the same AI prompt with the same information going in to get an AI predicted budget that would be needed then to run this particular project. The degree of variation was almost tenfold in the amount of predictions that came from the AI. And that became my teachable moment about how it's really your expertise that goes into this system and into this conversation, that over-reliance on this and without any critical examination could lead to massive implications to whatever project you're trying to advance. And so I will use simple techniques like that to start a whole conversation. There are certain things that it does better than others. This was an example of a fairly massive failure. And their homework assignment was to then develop a project budget, and we had conversations about who was going to use AI and in what instance, and uniformly the students said, we're not touching this, not for this instance.
So from our perspective, let me try to respond in two parts. One is how do we help create and prepare a future workforce for AI? And here, when we look at many of our client countries, they struggle with some of the basic capabilities. So how can we strengthen the STEM capabilities around the world? Because to me, that provides the foundation on which AI and other learning can happen for people to get empowered in the years to come. The second is to be more opportunistic with AI and take on agentic AI and other kinds of applications to see how we can fast-track the delivery of education in the primary and secondary stages of a kid's life. Of course, the latter requires a trusting way in which what is being taught is credible and reliable, and it doesn't kind of in any way push out information that could essentially alter the thinking. So these are the two ways we are approaching how to tackle the future of education in an AI era.
Great response. Any other thoughts?
I'll try to offer just a quick thought. There's a phrase that a colleague of mine coined that I find helpful when thinking about the moment when it comes to teaching. That the phrase was teaching for turbulence, right? Just because there is so much churning in the world right now that, just to pick up on my last point, I don't know what the future's going to be like 5 years from now. And so that makes it almost impossible to train people for particular types of jobs, right? And so the role of the university in particular needs to become broadly developing capacities for inquiry in our students so they can ask the right kinds of questions in a changing world to be helpful to themselves and to their societies, right? And so I think, extreme skepticism, but also the ability to generate extreme optimism is something that our students need to be able to develop. And that's that, our role in the classroom is the exercises that Nicole laid out, and thinking about developing the systems that the World Bank requires, solving particular problems, but also always being curious. Like we need to somehow generate that in our students.
Yes, if I may add to that, so at our school, Kogod School of Business, we've been trying to integrate AI into our curriculum very, actively and progressively, and we believe that the skills and knowledge required for the AI economy will evolve very quickly over time. So we focus on AI literacy and fluency, but also we believe that students need to build deeply human skills, like a critical thinking and also curiosity about things, and then communication and also judgment about the output of AI. So these are very critical skills going forward. And also, we also believe that the deep domain knowledge will be even more important because study shows that people with deep domain knowledge can actually boost their productivity more with AI support. So these are some of the things we are focusing on right now, but excellent question. We probably have one last question for the panel.
Hi, my name is Amanda Brenner. I'm an SIS alum from 2016. This question is focused, I think, most towards Professor Nicholson and Dr. Morton, but I would love to hear what any of you have to say. It was a great panel. I was very struck by the language around how we are implementing AI as quickly as possible, as if there is a final end goal and we have not established one, right? As a society or as a world, or even as industry and technology, or public sector, right? What we are giving these goals to meet certain timelines to make sure we are not behind in implementing AI. And yet, what is the end goal there? So I started thinking that sometimes we end up, because we do not have a goal now, and it's gonna be imperfect to try to backward, sort of make a goal. It's just not gonna be incredibly nuanced in that. But I wonder if minor goals that we start talking about, things like equitable access, diversity of opinion, those are things that are gonna come up now that we are having these discussions, and I think that's very important, especially because of the digital divide of what we've seen in the past with the internet. And yet at the same time, as Dr. Morton said, we are having this influx of new technology created in the private sector using private sector data. And that means the folks who are those who are designing our future are a particular set of folks who are not elected officials, do not represent the people, et cetera. Whatever you think about that, in reality, there's a lot of power there for those who are designing the tools. So I question, if we're going to have these discussions about making sure that we have equitable access and sort of the democratization of having these tools available, I see the flip side as maybe over time we're having a more homogenized point of view because if all these tools are available to the whole world, people are gonna start thinking through that framework. And I'm very curious about how to have these discussions, especially when folks come to you and say, I'm interested in education, let's say workforce, my kids need to learn AI if they're gonna keep up. They don't say what that means exactly. How do you have the conversation, or how do you frame it so that you respect that that you do believe that everyone should have equitable access to tools, while also starting a conversation about how that could, sort of the circumstances of this technology could make for more homogenized opinion and sort of flattening out diversity of opinion over time worldwide? It's a long question, but thank you.
Thank you for the question. That was for Simon and Doug.
And also I feel like I've spoken enough around these themes, but I'll try and be very brief. Yeah, we need some sort of societal control of these sorts of technologies, and I don't know what the forum for that looks like. It's not like I can get everybody in a room just to debate what AI is supposed to be. But consolidation of all of the power into the hands of a few probably does not serve anybody particularly well with the development of these technologies. This idea of a flattening is happening anyway with social media, with kind of consolidation of control of the media landscape. And we need, like as a society, just to kind of look at that and question it and push against it. And so I don't want to be training anybody to just be a servant of AI as a tool, or for us to be the tool of AI, right? Which is the way that this might play out. We need to develop more querying capacity. That's my punchline, I guess.
Yeah, let me just add a couple of quick thoughts there. It's a really critical part of the conversation. And like many of the things with AI, I think we're a little behind in terms of having the broader public discussion about both the target and the format in which we're taking. I can say that in the research world, reproducibility and transparency are really fundamental parts of the way we do this work. And so I would say that there's certainly room for discussion on this about having a paired set of public and private sector actors. The work that we do is often promoted through open source tools. Software is released through GitHub. The conversation is happening within a research landscape where that reproducibility is really fundamental. I see that being critically important to maintaining transparency and accountability against these tools. And so, yes, my future vision includes continued conversation and public investment towards this as a public good without the potential pathway that Simon mentioned and you brought up in your question of the further consolidation of both the information and the power around this technology, because it has great opportunity for good, but I think it needs to be a part of our ongoing efforts here to rein in the governance structures at multiple levels and the conversations that go along with that.
Great. Anybody else? All right, we are right on time, so please join me in thanking the distinguished panel.